Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. Our goal here is to bring you great information so you can improve your practice and your life. And leadership is a huge deal, one of the biggest responsibilities you'll ever have. And so recently, Dennis Hartlieb asked me to give a presentation to the dental online training community. That was here at the Dental World Headquarters. And the title was called Leadership for the Restorative Dentist. So I shared my thoughts, and I thought I would share it on the podcast. So please listen up. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you soon.
And I think CE is more important than ever, ever, ever. I think what you're doing is incredible. I think CE is not about the information. It's about keeping the fire lit. A lot of you are going to learn stuff today, but really what you have to do in CE is you just got to keep the fire lit. And hopefully today and the other things that you experience, you just keep the fire lit. You go back to your practice, and what you do is the product of your own conclusions. Now, I'm going to share with you today just my ideas on leadership for the restorative dentist. And I'm going to give you my number one tip right away and just start with that. And this is the thing that probably changed my life 2 years ago, that nothing has changed my life more than this as far as the concept of leadership. Someone said this to me not too long ago. It was probably right around 2 years ago. They said, you're not really a leader until you create other leaders or develop other leaders that develop other leaders. Now, I want you to think about that, because for me, leadership was like, I gotta inspire people. I gotta go to Cleveland this weekend and I gotta inspire a whole bunch of people. I gotta go in on Monday and fire these people up. I have to learn a new model for our business. I gotta find a way to find better people and make all of this work. And when I heard this and I started to think about this, I'm like, oh, this is so much easier. Because when you get to know me, you're going to be very underwhelmed. I'm not very smart. But I love people, and I can find other people that I can believe in, and they can do other things that I can't. Does that make sense? It takes the onus off of me. Now, my business is different than yours. I've gone through a whole evolution of this, and I don't mind sharing. I'm 54, and I don't care anymore, so you're going to get it. I probably met you when I was 28, 27, somewhere in there. I almost quit this business 12 times in the first half of my career because it was a grind. It was flying from one side of the country to the next, trying to have a family, little babies, and trying to get into an industry that's very tough to get into if you're not in a circle. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, I could just do something, stay home and make more money and probably be a better dad type of a thing. And when I started to find other people, you would see this. You'd find a person, they would change your life. How important is it having a great chairside assistant? Let me just go there. Scale from 1 to 10. To 20. Yes, when you find the right chairside assistant, it changes your life in 60 seconds. Somebody says, get out of here, I'll do this. And you go, where have you been my whole life? Finding the right hygienist changes the conversations in your practice. Finding the right administrative team member changes the financial landscape of your practice in 30 days. I love it when a great administrator sits in one of these rooms and says, your fees are going up. I don't want you to ever talk about money, and go back there and just do the dentistry. Does that make sense? Because they believe in you more than you often believe in yourself. So finding the right people is really important. So in my business right now, I spend 50% of my time just meeting with other people, aligning with other people, and I love it. And my goal is to help them grow. And so I want you to think about that in your practice, whatever your business model is. And I'm going to give you a simple framework for this. Now, this is not mine. I have a coach. Her name is Jamie. Jamie is here once a quarter, and we talk to her quite frequently. Jamie scares me. She is a coach that we found a couple years ago, and so she comes in and facilitates our leadership meeting once a quarter. And She's powerful. We're probably the smallest company she works with. She actually coaches the C team for Caribou Coffee. Has anyone had Caribou? Like she's the coach for that organization. She gave us this framework. She said, this is leadership in your business. It's self, others, culture, because all the people out there want a great culture. It starts with this process. You got to take care of yourself first. Then you got to come in and be able to lead others or help and grow others. And ultimately, you got to be responsible for the culture. And I'm going to give you the buckets that I think, or the way I see it in a restorative practice, because we coach so many of them. And our core business, we don't really take practices that are broken. A lot of the practices, and many of you we've coached, they're actually really good practices. They're just stuck. Typical practice that we see probably produces $1.2 to $1.7 million a year, and they're just stuck. They don't know how they're going to grow. They don't know how it's going to get any better, and they don't have any time. And they're confused because the single biggest problem in dentistry, my belief is there's too much information. You can open up your web browser right now, and you're going to hear the complete opposite of what I share with you today. And that's totally cool. People are telling others to scale their practice and sell it for 13 times EBITDA in a roll-up, which hasn't happened for more than 10 years. So it's one of those things where there's so much information, and it's okay. You just got to pick your path. I believe the happiest dentists I meet have the most uncomplicated lives. They're just simple lives. They do the same thing every day. They know they work 182 days a year. They know what they produce. They know what they collect. And really, if I want to give you the answer right now, again, I'm very opinionated, so you're not going to want to listen to me if you're listening to the masses. But a typical great restorative dentist only needs 1,200 patients, period, exclamation point, if you're a one-doctor practice. The better you are, the less you need. We have some dentists that only need 920 practices because their annual patient value is so high. If I could ask you to look at one number on your own, it would be APV. Your APV, I don't even need to know your name. I don't even need to know if you're male or female or where you practice. I can look at your APV, which is your annual patient value, which is the number of active patients you have, divided by your annual collections, will tell me how comprehensive in nature, for the most part, your practice will be. So as you can imagine, an APV that's $200 versus a doctor that we get. So our coaches, we have 10 of them. And they always joke, I want to see the APV first. So when they get a practice, the APV is $1,100. What do you already know? This is a doctor that values dentistry. They've trained patients to value what they do. They've trained them to pay. They've trained, you can see there's a high level of value. Now, it's not that the 200 APV is bad. It's just we've got a long way to go. I can already tell you they're probably writing off a third. They're struggling with what to charge. There's probably a lot of cancellations, and they're working a lot, probably a lot of PPOs in practice. Does that make sense? You can pick your path. That's the cool thing. I love dentistry because there's no rules. And so part of what self is just like figuring out who you want to be. Now, here's typically what we see. We see good practices. Like they're actually really good at managing other people, but the culture's a mess. They got one hygienist they don't want to talk to because he or she rode a broom to work and just doesn't like working with other people, but they produce $32,000 a month and sell dentistry all day long. Does that make sense? And they know every patient. Do you know what I mean? And typically the dentist just doesn't have a good sense of self and how they're going to organize their time. Now that can change. This does not exist. An amazing culture with mediocre engagement with your team management and poor self-management. This is what my coach said. Everybody wants this. And this is the truth of where most organizations are. So we're going to talk about how we can make each one of them green. And granted, I'm not a person to tell you all of mine are green. I can see when mine are conditioned yellow or even red. And my responsibility as a leader is to say, how do I change this? So let's get into self. The first thing about self, I say this to every single person that's in this room, and I say it multiple times. It's this. It's your thinking. The thinking is the most important piece to being an entrepreneur. The problem is never the problem. It's how you think about the problem. People come in and go, I'm working 5 days a week Delta Dental is killing me. It's not Delta Dental that's killing you. Does that make sense? I had a woman come up to me in New York. This is my favorite story on this. And she got mad at me because I did a day on cancellations, and she said, I got one for you. How do you fix cancellations on a Sunday? And I didn't know what to do, so I'm a wuss. I'm afraid of conflict. So what would you say to a woman who confronts you on how do you fix cancellations on a Sunday?
Don't see patients on Sunday.
Well, I didn't say that, so I was nervous. So I thought of anything I could think of, which is, why do you work on a Sunday? And she said, well, that's the only time my patients will come in. So is the problem the cancellations, or is the problem how she thinks about what she does? When you undervalue what you do, people will always undervalue who you are. You say you're just a dentist, you're right, you're just a dentist. And I'll blow you off in 1 second. If you're a hygienist, you say, I do cleanings, that's terrible. A cleaning is something that happens in your office after you leave. The thinking is the most important thing. And Melissa, talking to you this morning, I love talking to young entrepreneurs. I've had many conversations with you. I've had many conversations with you and many conversations with you. You guys are going on cool stuff now. But it's so fun to watch a young entrepreneur go, I can do this. I had a young female dentist not too long ago, right over there, stopped me, and she said, I didn't think I could do this. I know I can do this now. That's my favorite thing in the world. And she is going to be crazy powerful. She's a young female entrepreneur, and she's done putting up with crap. Does that make sense? I'm done with this. Have you ever said I'm done? I'm just done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. We call that today's the day. There's a day you just got to go, today's the day. I'm just done. I'm just done. We're not going to do that anymore. It might be with insurance. It might be with a poor behaving employee. It might be with something you're doing on your own. It might be, I'm just done. I'm done. And that becomes a powerful day. People come up to me all the time. Can I do fee-for-service? Absolutely. Fee-for-service dentistry prior to the pandemic was 6%. Does anybody know what it is now? 13%. Yeah, so anybody says fee-for-service is dead, they're not looking at any data. And I would tell you, the majority of practices that are participating with PPOs in the United States are writing off 42%. Now, 42%, that's crazy. Let's go to 33%. If you're writing off 33%, that means you're working 1 out of every 3 days for free. Let me frame that up. That means you don't collect a penny, what is that, until April 1st, May 1st? Yeah, you're not collecting any money. And so you're going to listen to any podcast, and they're going to talk about costs. They're going to talk about overhead rising. Yes, overhead is rising. And they're saying, trim costs, blah, blah, blah. You're leaving out the biggest piece of it. You're working for free a third of the time. Your costs are going to be super high. Does that make sense? So am I here to say you should get off of PPOs? No. But if you can take that 42% and go to 25%, you have a lot of money. Does that make sense? You got more time. Our fee-for-service practices never get to 0%. They're usually at 7, 8, 9, 10% because they're giving dentistry back to the causes that matter. So my point is this. All you have to do is think. I think the best dentists that I know that have the best lives work 180 some days a year. They know what they want to produce, they know what they want to collect, and they know what enough is. And so the biggest asset is how we think. Now, one thing, I have one regret, only one regret in my life. I wish I would have gone back and learned who I was earlier in my life. So I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan. Please do not criticize me if I tell you the best video I've ever seen on this. Gary V is, he speaks to the USC Entrepreneurial School of Entrepreneurs, and it is very foul. His language is terrible. But he said, you guys are all smart. If I could beat you on one thing, I would tell you, go back and figure out who you are, go all in, spend every dollar you can on every personality test possible as early in your life as possible to figure out who you are and go all chips in on your strengths. I spent a good part of 20 years trying to develop my weaknesses. Now, I'm an I on the DISC profile, which means I'm constantly messy. I love people, I love parties. The Kolbe A index is probably one of the best tests. If you take Kolbe, it's Kolbea, it's $75. The person who owns Kolbe, her name is Kathy Kolbe. Her maiden name is Wunderlich, so she comes from the Wunderlich family. So she took this test and applied it to business. I had Kathy interpret the results. She spends an hour with you. It is hilarious. She goes, I don't care if you're tall, short, I don't know where you live. I'm going to tell you who you are. I laughed out loud. She's like, you're the worst person on the planet to do two things at the same time. She said, you know when people say, don't chew gum and walk, like that's legit for you. She said, you probably don't finish projects at all. She said, are you married? I said, yes. She said, your spouse gets mad that you don't do what you say you're going to do. I'm like, oh my gosh. She nailed me in like 1 hour. So my point is this, is that I tried so hard to be somebody I was not. Now, the new test that I like the most now, we just got into this in the last year, it's called the Working Genius. It's by Patrick Lencioni. Our entire team did it this year. And I found out my two working geniuses are galvanizing intention and intention, which are bringing people together and inventing things. I can't finish a darn thing. My two biggest working frustrations are figuring out if this is the right thing to do in the details. I'm terrible at details and getting things done. I am the worst person on the planet on those two things. I just do them and then I figure out later. I used to live by ready, fire, then aim. Let's just go. My wife gets so mad, we'll go on a vacation. She's like, where are we staying? I'm like, we'll figure that out, type of a thing. Now I'm better about it. And what's really cool is as you start to learn about this, there's other people on your team. So I now have a CEO, his name's Dr. Behrendt. That is his working genius. Like that's the thing he's the best at. So I try to stay out of his way most of the day. So my point is this, figure out who you are and go all chips in on that. The second thing I would say is your health. The downside of being a restorative dentist. Let me just say this about you guys. I'm not a dentist. I've watched dentists so many times. I swear I want to put a heart rate monitor around some of you while you're prepping. I swear your heartbeat's got to be 142, 145 beats a minute. Or doing a composite on a tough case. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Does anyone have the Aura ring? We could probably do it with the Aura ring. We could probably figure it out. That thing is amazing, isn't it? I don't wear it during the day because everybody asks me what it is all the time. But I can see your heart rate right now if you gave me your Aura download. And I'd love to see you do a difficult case. And I bet you're in the 130 range doing something. Now, that is stress. Would you agree? And stress requires compensation. It has to have compensation. You have to take care of your body. The better you are as a dentist, this is my opinion, the more you have to compensate for stress because the words shade, shape, translucency, margins, those mean different things to you than the average dentist. Would you agree? You're not just going to go, just put it in there. It's fine. Do you know what I mean? And so your health is crazy important. And I think you have to reverse the aging process. There are some dentists, I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to take care of yourself first. Dentistry is a sport. I think it's an intense sport. It's a spiritual sport for some of you. Like you think about it all the time. And I joke, but it's not a joke. The periodontist in any town tells me what's going on in your practice. They can see everything. They know who the 2 or 3 best dentists are in town. And so part of reversing the aging process is 3-step. Now I learned this from a dentist in Ohio, and he might have been in your study club. He's long retired now. One of the healthiest people I had ever met. And I said, what's your secret? He goes, it's 3 things. He was friends with Dr. Mehmet Oz, and they did the real age challenge. So his biological age and his chronological age, there was quite a discrepancy. And so I'm a weirdo because I love to study these people. I go, give me your formula. He gave it to me. It was 3 things. He said, number 1, you should tell every dentist to wake up and do 30 minutes of cardio because cardio is beneficial for the body early in your life, but what is it really beneficial for as you get older? Your brain. I ride a Peloton almost every single morning, and it's not for the cardio. It's for the crazy stuff that's accumulated in my brain. My wife tells me that is so gross on the floor. I'm like, look at all that. It's crazy stuff. It's the crazy juice that's in my brain gets out in 30 minutes of cardio. He said the second thing is some type of resistance. It's 30 minutes of weights. Now, later in his career, he did yoga, and I know, yoga has benefits to the body I don't quite understand. My friend who's a radiation oncologist in Kansas City, he's a research freak. He says, we don't know why, but we know that people that do yoga, for the most part, when we look at pure statistics, they don't get sick. They don't have the regular ailments that others do. And so it's very fast. Now, I show this to people all the time, but people go, But that's like an hour. Have you ever thought about that? That's like a whole hour. And then what do people say? I don't have an hour. Do you know how long the average Facebook user is on Facebook? Does anybody know? Don't look at your screen time now, but look at it later. The average Facebook user is on Facebook 2 hours and 20 minutes a day. So I think it's important. I mean, that's part of self is just like, I got to be in the right headspace. Now, I'll just tell you, when I get 7 hours of sleep and an hour of cardio or an hour of this and this, I can deal with anything. You can throw anything at me. I'm going to be okay. I can be calm. When I don't have that sleep and I don't have the cardio, everything affects me at a higher level. It's extremely agitating. And then it also affects my mindset. And then he said, eat healthy 90% of the time. He broke it down in a simple mathematical formula. He said, how many meals are in a day? I'm like, 3. How many days are in a week? 3 times 7 is what? 21. He said, I like pizza. I go, I like pizza too. 21 major meals in a day or in a week. If you eat healthy 90% of the time, that means it gives you 2.1 meals to eat whatever you want. Now, I don't do 90%, but I'm shooting for 85. He said the body has an amazing ability to fix itself. And Uchi Odiado is one of my favorite. And he said, man, you should consider fasting, man, because fasting has incredible benefits on the body that we still don't quite understand. So the physical part. Now, the other thing, too, I would say is that the shower is an important piece of your day every day. And I heard this probably 25 years ago, and I've never not thought about it every single day. Every day you take a shower, I want you to ask yourself this question. Am I earning this or am I taking it? Because when you take a shower, it's a different feeling than when you earn it. There's nothing better than being super sweaty, knowing that was the hardest part of my day, and now I've earned this shower. And so my goal is 5 days a week, I want to earn it. I'm going to take 2, but I'm going to earn 5. And so just a simple mindset, because dentistry, again, is a sport. And lastly, on the self piece is your life. So I believe strongly now more than ever is that work has to fit into a container. We're now in a digital age where the rules have gone out the window. We can work whenever we want. We can work around the clock. You can now pipe into Open Dental and EagleSoft on the weekends. You can find out what's going on. Work has to be in a container for you and your team members, because I'm not a mental health expert, but mental health is real. Wouldn't you agree? The dangerous part that we see with mental health is that too much is on your plate. Too much is in your brain. I believe in files closed. There's got to be a point in your life. No, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you got to go home and go, files closed. I'm not thinking about it. And expectations have to be clear about what happens after hours. People try to call me after hours. I never pick up. Team members, I tell them, if you ever get a text from me, don't answer it. I mean, I may text you in the morning, but it'll be something, but I never say, hey, can you get back to me, type of a thing. You have to keep work somehow in a container. Now, I do love to work. Doesn't mean everybody else has to work, but I'm going to find my own time to do that. Whatever that container means for you, you've got to find a container. Here's an example of a container. Pete Dawson said that you can run a great dental practice on 48 weeks a year. When you get better at it, you can run it on 45 weeks a year. And so he was a big fan of sequestering weeks. And he said, just go into your schedule and mark out several weeks, and then train your practice to work on the remaining weeks. And he called that what was called blue time. And he said the best moments of your life will never happen at work. You'll have some of them at work, but your favorite moments will be when you're away from work. Now, here's the other thing to understand. If I'm one of your assistants, I need you to go away. Does that make sense? So I can like you better. We used to say to the kids when they were younger, we're going to go away. You guys go away. We go, we're going away so we can love you more. Do you know what I mean? You need a break from people. Don't you agree? And when you're a dentist, you should never call back to the office. I tell team members, if your dentist calls the office, hang up on them. Just be away. Your practice can work. Now, I'm going to go there because I don't care anymore. I think coverage is the dumbest word I've ever heard. People say, I go, why don't you take time? Why our patients need coverage? I'm like, coverage? Why? Coverage for what? Do they need blankets? Do they need umbrellas? What do they need? Well, I have all these patients. They need coverage. No, you don't. They don't need. Do you have a friend who's an oral surgeon? Yes. Do you have a friend who's a GP that could cover your patients? And you also know this, the more comprehensive you are, the less problems you have. Does that make sense? Lee Brady is one of my favorites. She tells patients right away in the comprehensive exam, she goes, this tooth is going to break. You like golfing? Yes. It's probably going to break on the golf course on a Sunday. Don't call me. I go, you say that to patients? Because I tell them right up front, don't you dare call me on a Sunday. I'm not going to pick up. They call on Monday. They go, Dr. Brady, guess what? It broke on the golf course. I bit into a sandwich. You were right. You know what I mean? We tell ourselves we need to cover these patients. And so I think it's dangerous too when you create a practice that has to cover patients. The more you know about who you want to be, patients can be trained. Write this down. We teach people how to treat us. We teach them how to behave. We teach them how to pay. We teach them what hours we work. I think it's very healthy. Some of you are going to fly to you're going to fly out of here to the airport. They're going to train you at Milwaukee. Go in this line. Then you're going to go in this line. You don't make the rules. They make the rules. So it's important. I also believe that 32. Now, Jerry Sheesh, who's a good friend of mine, we've had many conversations about this, but we've come to the conclusion, this is completely anecdotal, that the rule of 32 for a great restorative dentist is that's the max. You can only do 32 clinical hours or something is going to give. It might be your health, it might be a relationship, but you can make a great practice on 32 clinical hours. Jerry said this. He goes, Kirk, I get sick. I feel it here. I feel it here. Whenever I do 35, I talked to a dentist yesterday. She's a very famous dentist. She was going to do a podcast yesterday with me. She said, I have to cancel. I said, why? She goes, today was my day off and I had to do an implant case. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a day off. You know what I mean? I think there's only so much we can do before we start to get sick. And so you've got all these reasons, and I think the why has got to be your most important thing. At the end of the day, I'm building something here, and the work has got to be in a container. Now, another thing too, I'm a big fan of rituals. And so your life doesn't have to be perfect, but in your own personal life, you have to have a set of rituals. Now, my rituals come from my father and my mother, who are still alive. And in my house growing up, when I was probably 6 to 7 years old, dinner was non-negotiable. It was so non-negotiable that it was almost militant. We were very poor. We had a small kitchen table. My dad used to keep the milk on the floor next to his right foot. And we all had pint glasses. And he would say, no one, and I mean no one, gets up from this table. Am I clear? Until if the house starts on fire, I will put it out. Now I say the same thing, and they're like, okay, great, whatever. But I think you've got to create the rituals that matter for you at home. Now, if you have kids at home, or if you have anybody at home, you know how important the ritual of connecting for food is. It's a ritual. It also creates neural pathways. Some of you grew up as a kid, and you remember going to the lake. Does that make sense? That's just what you did. What you do is you tell yourself a healthy story about your life. And while no life is perfect, as a leader, you have to create healthy neural pathways. My kids will always remember one thing. My dad was tough about dinner. You can come to my house any night. You don't even need to be invited. Just knock on my door. Come in. You can sit at our table, and you'll see we do the exact same thing. Now, I learned this at Seattle Study Club Symposium many years ago. Sarah and I went there, and there was a woman psychologist, and she said you should all do roses and thorns every night, whether you have kids or not. Do you know what roses and thorns are? Does anybody know what that is? It's the best thing and then the worst thing, because it eliminates the closed-ended questions, like, how was your day? Fine. It also entertains the fact that you're going to talk and you're going to think. So you got to take me through the high and you got to take me through the low. When your kids are 23 and they come over for dinner, you go, what was your rose? They go, oh, nothing. And then you go, what was your thorn? And they go, your question. And you go, ha, ha, ha. And they have to play. We even do it at the end of our events. We won't do it today, but when we do to the top, I always love to go, what was your rose today? What was your thorn? I want to know. You got to think. It's a process. It's a ritual. Now, according to an 11-year study conducted in the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, now this is important in dentistry. People that have kids at home, as a leader, you have to be cognizant. And let me back up too. I could never say as a speaker, I understand what it's like to be a single mother. That would be preposterous. I don't even know what that's like. It's hard enough raising kids when you have help. I can't imagine raising kids without help. But here's what single mothers say to me. This is the hardest job ever, like ever. You have no idea the theme of constant underappreciation. It's not like I leave here, I go home to my apartment and I make a meal for my 5-year-old, and my 5-year-old looks up at me and says, Mom, I appreciate how hard you work for me. I think we have an incredible opportunity to understand the complexity of these lives. And people always say, like, here's what people ask me to do. I want you to come to my study club, or I want you to come to my office, and I want you to motivate my team. Just pump them up, man. Just pump them up. I want them to feel really good. And I can do that for like an hour or two, but that'll wear off. My question to you is, what do they have to be authentically motivated about so that whatever I do is only building on what they have? 61% of dentists say that their number one problem for the rest of their careers will be one thing. What is it? Does anybody know? It's the biggest problem in dentistry right now. Finding, keeping, growing, developing people. It's going to be your biggest challenge ever. I encourage every dentist, you should always learn clinical dentistry, but you should go all chips in on how do I build an amazing team? Because it'll change your life. Part of it is recognizing that they have a life too. The research around dinner time in the United States is that kids, if you eat 5 times a week, now that's a lot, are less likely to do drugs, they're less likely to drink, they're less likely to smoke cigarettes than those who share meals less frequently. They're also more confident kids. They're also less stressed out. I would say also you're less stressed out because you're connecting to things that matter. They're more likely to get A's and B's, and they're more likely to confide in their parents. They eat better too. The research goes on and on and on. Here's why I show you this slide. The majority of people that speak on practice management are going to tell you open up capacity. Let me share with you what that means. Do you work evenings? Okay. Do you want to double your production? Just go with, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so here's how we're going to do. Do you work till 7 p.m.? Okay, do you work 5 days a week? Okay, so we're going to work 5 days a week now. I want you to stay open till 7. Do you work Saturdays? God, no. Okay, now you're going to work Saturdays. I do this in courses too, and people are like, yeah, we already work 7 to 7 on Saturday. I'm like, oh, I should pick somebody different. Okay? I guarantee you, and you can do this too, I can double anyone's gross production in this room in 6 months. I can guarantee it. You can do it too. It's super easy. We're just going to open up all the filters. You're now going to work 5 days a week. Do you take every insurance under the sun? We're going to take Aetna. We're going to take Blue Cross Blue Shield. We're going to take Dentamax. Do you know what that is? We're also going to take every layer that Delta offers. Does that make sense? How fast is your phone going to ring? Fast. You won't even be able to answer it. In no time, all the chairs will be full. Maybe. Do you know what I mean? They'll be full of appointments, but we don't know if people will be there. You're probably going to equip your team to handle that increase. Does that make sense? And you're going to write off more than a third of it. And you don't even know that you're going to participate with multiple insurances because now they have what are called shared agreements, which means you sign up for one, but in the fine print, you are now obligated to the others because you didn't read the fine print. Does that make sense? I think the important thing is you can't get mad about that. What you have to do is you got to say, look, I know who I am. I know who I want to be. And I also know that I want people to have a life at the end of the day. And so the reason I show you this is so many people are working evenings. I go all over and people say, I'm open an evening. I'm like, do you have kids? Yes. Well, I have to be open in the evening. Why? Because that's what time my patients come in. Let me just go there. I wish I had an hour on this. People always go, well, I have patients. I have teachers. Okay, I love teachers. I think teachers in military should go first at the airport, not A-listers. You should have a special line for them. Would you agree? We have a dentist. His name is John O'Bowder. You can call him. He said, I can't do 7 to 3, 4 days a week. I have teachers in my office. I always say data removes all emotion. I go, John, go home. I want you to tell me how many teachers you have. Guess what? He went into EagleSoft. Guess how many teachers he had? 11. Okay? I said to John, you work days that teachers don't, right? Yes, a lot of them. Those are teacher VIP days. Call all 11 of them and say, we value what you do. This day is teacher day. Guess what he has more of in his practice now? Teachers. We subject ourselves to limiting beliefs. and our lives are on hold forever, and you miss thousands and thousands of hours of stuff that matters. So I think part of it is, what are you building? Now, the narrative in dentistry is, I believe that a beautiful new world-class multi-facility patient, blah, blah, blah. You see all these, and then you see these all the time. I see 64-year-old dentists building $4 million buildings. That's the dumbest thing ever. I'm like, how old are you? They go, 64. I go, how much is it? $4 million. Why? They go, it's an investment. I'm like, you should purchase an RV. You know what I mean? Not like, because if you purchase this at 64, where are you going to spend the rest of your life? And let me just share this. Big is sexy. It's very sexy. And education is heavily tainted now. Let me explain. Has anybody been to Dentsply Sirona? You can't go there and not think about how you're going to spend $300,000 to $400,000. Trust me, it's so sexy. You get the free drinks in the aisles and the food, and before you know it, you're going to spend $400,000. It's awesome, and it's where the money is. So you got to be careful about what you're building. Now, I'm going to show you, this guy shared with me, in the first day that I met him, he said this, and he said it many times since. He passed away at the age of 89, but he said it many times. When you have the right people, you can produce twice as much in half the time at the court of stress. Would you agree? We have practices all the time. They have amazing months. I'm like, holy moly, what happened? What do you think they all say? What do they all say? It's all something of the same sort. They never say, I'm really good at dentistry right now. I've been doing this DOT thing. I'm really good now at composite. No, they always say, I got the right person. I got an amazing team now. Things just work better. Now I'm going to show you how to do it. And it's real simple. The right people. It's just, you only hire people for two reasons. Leadership in a restorative practice is hiring the right people and putting them in the right seats, and it'll change your life. You only hire people for two reasons, not four, not six. Here's the first reason. They share your core values. You have a set of values, their behaviors, their verbs that are non-negotiable, and they share the same values. The wrong people, they're not bad people, they just don't share your same values. Your least favorite people don't care about the same things that you care about. Would you agree? You could try to rehabilitate somebody who doesn't care about you, but that's a waste of time. I did it for years, trying to get people to care about things, but they would say I, me at the beginning of sentences. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was hard. And it wasn't their fault, it was my fault. Now, the right seat. Remember, right person, right seat. Right person shares your values. The right seat, they get results. It's not because they're your neighbor. It's not because they've been with the practice forever. It's not because they're a friend of a friend. You need people that can get results. Now, is it perfect? No. But ultimately, people have to be based in results-based, not time-based. Now, the wrong seat doesn't mean they're bad, just means they don't get results. Now, here's your homework for a better practice and a better life. If I was going to ask you to just do a few things, this would be one of the major things that I do. And this is my game for the rest of my life as far as this place goes. You can create this simple document. I'm going to encourage you to do it tonight. Have a glass of wine, just sit down and plot your entire team. So if you have 12 people, they're going to fall in one of four quadrants. Wrong person, wrong seat, wrong person, right seat, right person, wrong seat, or right person, right seat. I'll take you through all four of them. Here's one scenario that a person might fall into. Wrong person, wrong seat. You lose a front desk team member, an administrative team member. You go on Indeed, and you find a woman on Indeed across town who was an office manager at another office, and they have EagleSoft. We have EagleSoft. She's an office manager, EagleSoft hired. Does that make sense? I don't even need to interview her. Gonna hire. Have you ever hired somebody? Office manager? EagleSoft, come on in. And they come in, and the first day, you're showing her how to use EagleSoft. You're like, okay, do you know how to log in? No. Okay, do you know where the schedule is? No. Okay, you already know this is wrong person, wrong seat. And you probably don't like them. So is it to their benefit and yours to keep them? No. And here's the other downside. You bring in somebody like this, the rest of your team is like, okay, you have to do something. You need to do something, right? Nothing frustrates a great team member than when you consistently tolerate a bad one. Does that make sense? Great team members will go, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. You need to do something. So that happens. You just got to have a conversation. That's why I'm a big fan of the onboarding process. You should always have a 3-3-3. Here's a 3-3-3. It's really easy. It vets this out. You should have a standardized onboarding process in which people have to learn things in 3 days. And it's simple. Like, where did the doctor go to dental school? What are our hours? How many team members? Tell me a little bit about the practice. It's a simple test that at the end of 3 days, they pass it with flying colors. Your best team members are going to pass that in 2 days. Your best one is going to go, this is super easy. Like, can we go on to the next thing? Then there's something they have to do in 3 weeks. By the end of 3 weeks, you're going to have to be good at this. And I've got a program for you. At the end of 3 months, you're going to have to be proficient at this, and this. That way, you don't get into a conversation about subjective, you're not fitting, all this kind of, they know. The best team members need a clear line of sight in order to succeed. And so my encouragement is just create a 3-3-3 that they already know whether they're doing the right thing and they're on board. Now, you're also gonna have this scenario, wrong person, right seat. Amazing hygienist, 4,000 codes galore, but doesn't like working with other people. Make sense? This is where you just got to have the tough conversation about values. And they can choose whether to be on the bus or off the bus. We teach here at Act Dental, today's the day. It's really simple. I learned this from a friend of mine that owned several businesses. He came in and he observed our business many years ago. He's like, why do you put up with that? And I had a team member that was very difficult to deal with. He goes, okay, I'm going to teach you a concept. It's called Today the Day. And so he sat next to me while I did it because I was scared to death. I brought this team member in and I go, hey, today's the day. And then they always say, for what? Today's the day. I want you to go home. I want you to have a great meal with your family. I want you to think about your future here. Don't say anything right now. I want you to go home and I want you to tell me if you really want to be here. Because if you want to be here, I'm all in. If you're not, it's totally cool. We'll keep this between you and I. We'll unwind. I'll help you find another place. I was so scared to have that conversation. It took about 60 seconds. That employee left. Guess what happened when they came back? Walked right in. What was their answer? Nope. Great. Story between you and I just needs to stay between you and I. I'll help you unwind. We'll make this perfect. Blah, blah, blah. It was one of the greatest things I had ever learned in my whole entire life. I think there's a point where you just got to, if somebody's not behaving correctly, now you do have to have core values in place. So that's an opportunity because this person single-handedly will take out your entire team and make you hate going to work. Now, this one is actually a great scenario. You have an amazing front desk or administrative team member. They're awesome. They've been with the practice for 30 years, but they don't like collecting money. And their primary responsibility is to what? That's okay. Somebody's all in on your value system, but they're a good person. In most cases, not every, you can find a role for this person if they're all in on who you are. It's a great opportunity. And then lastly, you've got right person, right seat, which is really simple. They fit your values and they get results. And these are your favorite people. Now, again, I'm going to go back to the whole, if you plot 12 people, nobody has a perfect practice. I have 19. And I'd love to tell you it's all perfect. It's not. There are going to be, I have 4 kids. There's always one of them in trouble, okay? So when you plot this, you're going to see that the dots are going to be all over, and you can put the team member's initial to it. Now, your goal is to see how many of you can move up there and to the right. A typical great practice that we coach, if they have 12 team members, 4 of them are up in the quadrant up there. So now your job as a leader is, how do I get a 5th one up there? How do I get a 6th one up there? Any dentist who goes, yeah, I have 12 and I have the perfect team, just walk away from them. Like, that doesn't even exist. Even Jesus had staff problems. So, you're always going to have people that are all over the place. And what you're going to do is do a check-in to see how you can grow them or help them grow. Now, there's a downside to this. There's a huge downside to this. The more people you get up into this quadrant, they have to be challenged. People here have to be challenged. They will grow tired of you just being the same person, or it's the same job. So we got to challenge them with CE, better thinking, all of that. So We got to put the right people in the right seats. Now, function accountability chart, I wish I had 2 hours for you, but this is probably one of the most important tools you'll create in your business. But 80% of your problems in a restorative practice exist in your function accountability chart. That is who does what. What is their role? If you told me about your practice and told me about the problems that you have, I could probably sequester it to a person or a thinking issue. It's a role that's not working in your practice. You probably don't have the right person in the right seat, or it's clearly defined, or you don't have a function accountability chart at all. This is one of our favorite practices. It's my next. Your goal is to get 100%. Now that's the goal. You'll never really get there. You'll probably get, because your function accountability chart is going to change. In a great restorative practice, it's going to change. You're going to go to a 2-assistant setup. You might go to an extra. Jim's going to talk about how practices have changed, especially out of network. Your thinking is now going to influence your practice style. If you get heavily into airway, which I'm watching some dentists. I have a dentist in Leawood, Kansas. If I told you what he produced and collected in a month, you would just call me a liar. But there are weeks that he doesn't even pick up a handpiece. He is so into airway, and he's solving very complex problems for kids that moms are jumping on Facebook groups, and people are driving long distances and paying cash for him to start to put the riddle together for him. And he couldn't be more excited about that. His dad works in the practice, and he says, I pick up a handpiece all day. He's producing way more than I am. Now, my point is that his practice philosophy is changing, so his function accountability chart's changing. He's heavily with ENT, myofunctional therapist now, so it's a different type of practice. And that's a cool thing. This is a practice that we coach in North Dakota. She's awesome, and this is one of the best function accountability charts I've seen. Now, I don't want to go into the details, but I'm happy to send it to you if you want, just as a template. As you can see, all the roles are clearly outlined. And in this one, you can see the names. She's constantly evaluating who does what and where are the opportunities we have to put energy into. So the function accountability chart is incredibly important. And then, yeah. Which one? You want the big one? Yeah. However you do this, it's easy. The first version I did was just post-it notes on this. I just took yellow and green. And you have to create the chart without, our coach does this. I don't want any names, no names. Because when you put names in there, you screw it all up. I've elevated people and given them funky titles because I love them and I don't want them to leave. So I've called them, and that never works. It ends up failing expectations. You have to create the organization that's going to be healthy in the next 18 months and start moving in that direction. Now, let me go to this. Then you've got communication rhythms. So I won't spend a lot of time on these two, but I think these are critical. I think everybody's got to have a morning huddle that's really well done. If you don't have a morning huddle, that's because you don't believe it's valuable or you don't do it well. I can't imagine going to see a surgeon, a dentist, or any professional that didn't meet with their team to clearly discuss what was going to happen today. You also have your weekly team meeting where you land the plane for 2 hours and you work on the business instead of in it. But I want to talk mostly about check-ins. Our coach made us do this. I didn't love it at first. It's one of the most important things we do with our team members. So I believe personally, and I found this firsthand to be absolutely true, that every team member needs a check-in on a regular basis. I would encourage you once a month. Now I have this agenda. We give it to a lot of our practices. The team member runs it. It's 30 minutes. All you have to do is show up. The team member runs it. You don't do anything. Stop doing reviews. Stop doing all of these, appointments to talk about your raise. If you do a regular check-in, team members are going to run it really well, and they're going to tell you a lot. Now, here's how it's done. The first thing you do is you schedule the next one, because that's the one that gets missed first. All right, when's the next time we're going to meet? Next month, 30 minutes. And I let them go through personal high, personal low. They don't have to tell me anything. I'm not asking you as a team member to tell me anything. I'm just going to leave space for it. The first couple times you do it, team members won't tell you anything. They'll be like, no, everything's great. Then after they've been here for a year, they drop a bomb on you and go, oh my gosh, I did not need to know all that information. But what you're doing is you're cultivating vulnerability-based trust. They're starting to trust you with their lives, like wild stuff. And you can say, listen, I had a team member recently go, listen, I'm going to tell you what's going on. I just need one thing. I need some grace. I was like, you got it. She would have never told me what she told me had I not allowed space for that. Sometimes it's good stuff. So here's what I'm trying to say. As an employer, you either care or you don't care. Does that make sense? And you could say, I care. What you do screams, if you're the restorative dentist who says I care, then show me what you do that proves what you just said is correct. And I like the idea of having a system for it. Because I'm not smart enough to schedule these, so they're automatic. Laura schedules them for me, for the team members. Professional high, professional low. So we're gonna do personal high, personal low, professional high, professional. Now it's pretty quick. I just wanna know. One of them, I had a team member say my professional low is what you said last week. I needed to know that. She would have never told me that had I not asked. You're also mitigating future tension. Have you ever had a great team member stop you in the hallway and go, I'm sorry, I gotta give you my notice today. And you're like, what happened? Now everyone tells you to do an exit interview, but that's after the fact. If you're doing check-ins, this is gonna be a blip on the radar 6 months to a year before it happens. They're gonna tell you I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy because of this. And then what's the one thing leadership can help you with? Sometimes they say nothing, sometimes they say this. And then you also learn a lot about team members. Now, you don't have to do the last 3 boxes, but this is just a system. I have team members that tell me, I want that job. And it's a great opportunity. Now, here's my favorite question to ask when somebody gives you something that's pretty heavy. I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and she's a big fan of check-ins, and I love this question. I actually use this at home quite a bit. A lot of times when people are challenged, we say, oh, how can I help you? I want to help you. You know, this is a great question. What does support look like from me? And they'll tell you. Don't guess. I came home one day, my son was coming out of the garage. He goes, I love my wife. My son was like, Dad, don't go in there. Don't. She's so mad. I was like, okay. It's one of those things where you come in and you go, okay, what's going on? And I use the Brene Brown thing. I go, okay. I go, what does support look like with me? She goes like this. Can you pick up the dog crap, please? I was like, I can do that, because we had people coming over. I was like, sometimes you just don't know what's going on. What's support look like for me? Great opportunity. And then ultimately, you got to have a quarterly planning session and an annual planning session. A quarterly planning session is when you land the plane and you think about what's going to happen for the next 13 weeks. Do not do an annual, you can do an annual plan, but your quarterly plan has to be reflected in your annual plan. Human beings can only stay focused for 90 days. I was the person who tried to create 92 goals for 2025, and it was just exhausting. Now, as a team, Laura, I don't even know how many priorities we have this quarter. We have what, 5? I think we have 5 priorities. Oh, we have 3 priorities. 19 people trying to get 3 things done, and it's broken up into quarters. Now, lastly, I'll end with values. This is a big piece of work that we do with our practices, but I think your business and every business has to have a set of core values. If I could go back, this would be another thing I would do earlier, is have a set of values. They're non-negotiable behaviors. And so these are ours. This was version 1.0. And I had them put on t-shirts, everything. It's probably one of the most important things we've ever done. Because I don't need people that are brilliant. Yes, I do want people that are brilliant, that are talented. But for me, here, write this down. 30% of your life will be spent at a place called work. 30% of your life. I just want to go to work and laugh. I want to come to work and I want to enjoy. And what that means for me is, I just want people that are all in on our values. These are behaviors. All in attitude, we before me, I want results. We got to be growing. I'm a big CE fan. And so whatever it means to you, you got to give life to it. And then you got to constantly add some energy to it. So change it up with the graphics, tell stories, find a way to do it. And I'll finish lastly with my last thought, is you've got to have a core purpose. I love what you started with, core purpose, core values. because it's way bigger. The whole point of your core purpose is to motivate and lead your people. It's the glue that holds everything together. Ours is really simple. It's been the same thing for almost 20 years. Better practice, better life. There's a lot of people out there that can create multiple practices, but I want to check 2 boxes. It's got to create a better practice and a better life. It's got to be bigger than it. And it's got to be the heart of something that's meaningful. You talk to any young person, especially my kids, they want to do meaningful work more now than ever. So it's the old me. I'm going to leave you one last thought. It's this. I want you to write this down. Level 4 leaders get people to follow them. Level 5 leaders get people to follow a cause. I never want anybody to follow me. I want to be here as an instrument on the team, but I want them to do it for their own reasons.